You're here. Welcome to the Masterminding Success podcast. They say if you want to be successful in business and in life, then surround yourself with successful people. So pull up a seat. The mastermind is about to begin.
If tomatoes are fruit, does that make ketchup a jam?
Maybe. It
Oh,
should
hey,
be.
you you made it. Glad you could join us for another episode of the Masterminding Success podcast. We're your hosts, Keith Wheeler.
And Nuria Corby.
And what are we talking about today, Nuria?
Today we're going to talk about, or the subject is, should I write a book? So
Yeah,
I think that's a tricky one.
it is. It is. One of the things that I tell people all the time is I think that everyone from, and I just say 7 to 107, but the age doesn't really matter, but I think everybody has a story inside them, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. A lot of people, when they hear of writing a book, they immediately think of a fiction book, but I think nonfiction books are just as important. Now I know that they don't, when you look at the stats, about 70% of the books that are purchased every year are fiction, because people just want to escape from their everyday, which I completely understand, and I'm one of those. But you don't want to underestimate the power of a good nonfiction book too.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people have stories to tell, like their own survival story or their own,
Right.
they turn into self-help books because they are telling their story in the hope of helping other people. I think it's actually a really interesting subject because I think if you talk to anybody, everybody probably at one time has thought, I should write a book about this, or I should write a book about whatever. And I'm no different. I've thought that since I was a teenager. Always wanted to write a book, and I've never written a book other than a few children's books. But you've actually written a book, Keith, haven't you? Or more than one?
Yeah. No, I have a total, including my children's books, I have a total of 30 books that I've written.
That's good going.
But yes, and some are nonfiction, some are fiction. They range in sizes, but you brought up a really good point where a lot of people have thought to themselves, I should write a book or whatever. But also, there are a lot of people who never thought that, but then people tell them, they hear their stories, because we're more liable to tell a story just talking to somebody, and they're like, you should write a book about that, and I think one of the things when it comes to writing a book is it seems like one of those things that other people do, not, oh, I can't write a book, it just seems like this very daunting task. And now don't get me wrong, writing a good book or a great book, those, it does take some skill.
Mm.
But just especially the first draft, the number of people that approach me and they're like, I can't write a book, they just have this negative thoughts about themselves and their abilities.
Yeah.
I think, again, like I said, it seems like a very daunting task, and I think it seems bigger than what they can approach themselves, and it's not the case. It's really not hard to write a first draft of a book.
Mm. And I think another obstacle is that people actually don't know the process of writing a book and then publishing a book. I don't think a lot of people know that you can do it yourself. A lot of
Right.
people don't know, they wouldn't know how to write it. I mean, in the past, people just used to take pen and paper and write down their story or whatever it was. But now there's just so many options, so many ways you can write a book, and people don't know how to. And then when you don't know how to do something, you don't even start because
Right.
you just don't know how to start. So I think that is a big obstacle as well. I mean, I'm looking at my shelf up there because I've still got a course that I bought years ago, creative writing course, and that was in itself, that was quite hard to start because you're given tasks and then you have to just, never mind a book, you're just writing a small article or whatever. And it's
Right.
hard, it's really hard. And I think people, the thought of writing a whole book can be daunting, really.
No, I agree. One thing that people, in the, I mean, we know because we've been in the book industry for a while, but there's so many different terms, and it can get wrong. Am I a pantser? Am I a plotter? It doesn't matter. It really comes down to just writing your story. And again, like I said, there is a skill behind writing a great book, but especially if you're just starting out, you don't have to just rely on yourself for all the skills. There are editors and different types of editors that you can reach out to after you have that first or second draft done that can help you tweak it into a good or great book. And again, that's nonfiction or fiction. But it really comes down to just getting the idea on paper to begin with. And no one has to see that first draft. No one's going to see my first draft of the novel that I wrote, which ended up being 75,000 words. I'll be honest, I wrote it during NaNoWriMo, which for those people who don't know, NaNoWriMo is in November, and it stands for National Novel Writing Month. And it basically, for the 30 days of the month of November, you're tasked with writing a 50,000 word first draft. I wrote the very first NaNoWriMo I wrote 55,000 words in 22 days, but it was hot garbage. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I would say probably 90% dialogue. Like, it was just people going back and forth talking, and it was almost like a TV script as opposed to, an actual novel, because I handed it off to my oldest son, actually, because he's an author as well. And I handed it off to him to just peruse it. And he's like, Dad, I read like the first 2 chapters and I was lost. And I'm like, what? He's like, all you do is have people talking. I'm like, that's a good point. So that's how it went from 55,000 to eventually 75,000 words, because I had to, cut stuff up, but mainly I had to add in a bunch of, descriptions and things like that to, each person had their own voice, but especially when you're first reading the book, you haven't yet learned each person's voice, so like the way the mom refers to the daughter has she got a different nickname for her than the dad does. But until you learn that, you don't know that. So it's very jarring. So yeah, I mean, again, you don't have, first of all, the first draft is just that. It's like in school, sometimes they call it a rough draft. It's really just getting your ideas on paper. It doesn't even necessarily have to be all complete sentences. It's just your starting point. And then from there you can tweak it to become a better book.
You can even start with something smaller than a book. You could start blogging, for example. I think ever since I started blogging, it seems more doable to write a book than before. I think before that it was really daunting, and now I think of it as a series of blog posts, really.
Right.
So I think anybody could write a book, even though maybe it is a skill, of course, to write well and to write in an engaging way that draws people in.
Right.
And not everybody has that. I don't think I can do that very well, but there are ways you can learn, and there are ways that you can find editors maybe, or even get someone to write it for you, someone who's better at it. But I think if somebody wanted to write a book, there is definitely a way to do it. And I think now that I'm more aware of the book world, whereas before I had no idea. Before I went into book publishing, of course I didn't know anything, and I thought that to write a book you had to have a publisher. I thought you had to have an agent, or I thought all these people were there to publish your book. And when I realized that you can actually do it yourself, it was like a magic door had opened. And there are so many ways you can write a book. We were talking about short reads before we started the podcast, and that is another really good opportunity for people who don't want to write a whole long novel, to write something a little bit shorter. And I think the most important thing is just to start, even if it is with a pen and paper and writing some sentences down. I think everything is about taking action. I think if it's one thing I've learned being in business, is that you just need to start, and then you can improve slowly. But if you don't start, you can't improve anything. So I think that's the main
Yeah.
thing. But the topic is, should I write a book? And if that's what you want to do, absolutely, yeah. You know,
Yeah, I
can you think
agree.
of, yeah, can you think of any instances where someone shouldn't write a book?
Um, I really can't. I mean, even if like, obviously you want to know your audience. So let's say I'm just going to say nonfiction for now, because one thing that a lot of business owners don't think of is you can use one thing that you were talking about was short reads. For those people who don't know, a short read is anywhere between it's in Kindle, it's actually called a Kindle short read, and it's between 1 page and 100 pages long. So, I've got 28-page book out there, not fiction, but especially with nonfiction in your business, clearly you have some knowledge of what you're doing. All you have to do in order to write a good nonfiction book, a helpful nonfiction book, is to know more than someone who's been doing it a little bit less time than you are. So, if you're only been doing it for, 6 months, well, then you're going to write a beginner's book, and, but people can use that even if it's not about getting the sales. You can use that. And I see more and more businesses doing it nowadays, using it as kind of like a lead magnet into getting more work in, whereas, years ago, I'm aging myself, but we used to use these things called business cards, nowadays, it's kind of like the modern business card. And so I really can't think of a time or a reason why, if you're interested in writing a book or even considering it, why you shouldn't, you know, keeping in mind that, even if it's, your business is oriented in mainly a language that is your second language or third language. I'm not saying that what you're going to write is what you're going to publish. Again, like I said, you can hire out to do other skills, so if you need someone to, to edit it and write it better in English or whatever, that's fine. But to actually start the process, I can't think of a reason why it shouldn't be done. Because I know some people may say, I don't have the time. If you're a single mom and you've got, little kids at the house, and you're just starting a business on the side to try to make extra income, you just don't have the time. I am not shy to say that I have written uh, multiple books on my phone when I was hiding in the bathroom. You know, it's whatever you need to do to get it done, because like I was saying before, that there's a lot of lingo and everything else, and there's so many different products you can use to write a book in. Google Docs, MS Word, whatever you need to. I mean, you can write it in your notes on your phone. It doesn't matter. Again, it's just the first draft. It's just getting started, and if you don't, off the top of your head, especially if you're writing a nonfiction, if you don't know exactly what you want to say, then you can do what's called plotting, and you can, basically create bullet points. And I mean, I could do a whole nother episode on how to write a nonfiction, how to start a nonfiction book, because I've got it pretty much down to a set of steps that I do when I'm writing it, and and I'm able to knock them out, in a decent amount of time, at least, again, that first draft.
Yeah, maybe you should write a manual about how to do that. That would
Yeah.
be, I'd buy it because I need to know how to do it.
Yeah, it would definitely be a short read, because like I said, it's not complex. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that, like I said, everybody, if you want to write a book, or if you have got a knowledge, I was told this before I created my, the YouTube channel, that you're doing a disservice to your future customers or your future readers by not sharing it. You think about, just don't think about how much work it entails. Think about how many people you can help with it, and that's fiction or nonfiction. Nonfiction, obviously, you're helping them with the information. Fiction, you're helping them escape from the whatever life looks like for that reader, and that's your goal as a writer, to either inform or entertain. It's really that simple.
Yeah. I think that hits the nail on the head, and I think everybody has got something that they can teach or just tell other people, because even if you're telling your story, you might not think it's that interesting, or you might not think that it's helpful to anybody, but I bet you there is somebody who wants to hear it and who finds some kind of comfort from it, or some kind of helpful point in it, So sometimes we think that whatever our story is isn't that interesting to other people, but other people are interested. You never know where that comes. It's a little bit like when I started my YouTube channel. I started my channel, I think it was about blogging at first, because I wanted to talk about how to make money online. And it was blogging, and I thought, no one's going to listen to this because I don't have that much experience. But I just did it for the fun of it, and because I wanted to learn how to make a YouTube channel as well. And I was surprised when people actually started watching it and started commenting on it, and that just got the ball rolling. And I think that happens. I'm sure that will happen with people who are writing a book, and they think, oh, I don't know how many people will read this, or who will want to read this. I think everybody will be surprised that there's always someone who would love to read it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole category of book called memoirs, where somebody just writes about their life, and the people that read those types of books are very voracious readers. And think about it, they're reading about the life of somebody they never met. Yes. I'm not talking about reading about the life of Dwayne The Rock Johnson. I'm talking about somebody who lives in little town, whatever, city, town, country, whatever, and people are reading that. And so one thing is, don't think about the amount of work it takes for you to do, but who you could be helping. And conversely from that is, if you're worried that no one's going to read it, then what are you worried about? No one's going to read it. You know what I mean? So either way, it doesn't really, I mean, yeah, it's going to cost you time. It may cost you some money if you end up paying for editors and things like that. But I will warn you that, at least for me, writing books can be addicting. I know you mentioned earlier about getting an agent and getting traditionally published, and I've done that. I am traditionally published as well as self-published. I will tell you, there are definitely pros and cons, but in the end, that's just more people to pay, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. That's more people whose hands are in the pocket. Not saying that they don't do work, but they didn't write the book. And so, yeah, I mean, I absolutely adore writing, little short reads. I will say, and this is something that Nuria, you and I discussed before we went live with the podcast, but if you're going to do a short read, you want to make sure that in your book description, you state somewhere in there that it is a shorter book. Either you can call it a short story, or you can say, all this information in only 28 pages, however you want to spin it. But that, because I have personally received negative reviews because people don't necessarily read the product description on Amazon that tells them it's 28 pages, and then they'll leave a review that, I thought this was a novel, and it's only 28 pages. I'm like, but I mean, it says it there. So yeah, just being a little bit more just upfront with it in the book description, and again, kind of putting the little salesman hat on and making it sound like it's a positive instead of just a statement of fact. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think whether you want to write a fiction book, a nonfiction book, I mean, if you know about yoga, if you know about, I mean, all different things, and especially if you
can write a recipe book.
But especially if you know something that's a little bit more obscure, those are the ones that can really sell, because there's less people writing books about it. Exactly. So like if you are into yoga, there's a lot of yoga for beginners studies or stories, but what about, yoga for people over the age of 55, again, dialing in a little bit more. So these are, again, just ideas.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I'm already thinking, because I love I love thinking of niches and of angles and how you could write it. So I mean, there is something for everybody. You could write a book on how to tidy your house. You can write a book on how to move
Hmm.
house, um, on how to prepare for a trip, for a holiday, for traveling. You were saying yoga with a baby. You know, when you have
Yep.
a baby to look after,
Mhm.
what you can do while you know, obviously the baby's not going to do yoga with you,
Right.
but you know,
Right.
and
Yoga
yeah,
for
just
yoga for when you're pregnant, you know?
exactly. That's another one. But I
Yeah.
think there's something for everybody. Cooking, you know, recipe book. I was thinking of that the other day. And if a book is too much, start blogging. You know, start with little articles at first. I found that really helpful. If I hadn't
Mhm.
started blogging, I would never have got into self-publishing. So I think that kind of opened the door for me, and I started with low content book publishing. And for anyone who doesn't know what that is, they're books that are not written, books like notebooks, planners, journals, that kind of thing. And that was obviously easier because you don't have to write the books, you just design the books.
Mhm.
But even that step helps me now in not finding the idea of writing a book so daunting. You know, now I'm
Right.
thinking of it, oh, it's maybe not that difficult. so so I think sometimes you have to approach something step by step, you know, little baby steps, and
Right.
break down the big task into smaller modules. So
Yeah.
I think that helped me, and now I find the idea of writing a book exciting rather than scary.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's about really just not overwhelming yourself. And I hope one thing that the listeners take away from this is that, you know, writing a book is not shouldn't be scary. You know, it's an
Exactly,
adventure.
yes.
It's a lot of fun. You know, and you know, yeah, we you know talked about a couple different niches just off the top of our heads, and of course those are nonfiction, but fiction is the same way. My biggest suggestion is especially when you're first starting out, if it's your first book, because I will tell you, they are addicting, at least for me. But you know, with your first book, don't even worry so much with when you're writing that first draft of what we were talking about niches, which just basically means, you know, you're drilled down category. Who's your end reader going to be? I wouldn't even worry about that. I would just write it. And then as you're writing it or as you're done and then you take a step back and maybe a day or two later you reread it, then you can start thinking of, okay, who is this really for? And then you can really start dialing it in and being more specific.
Yeah.
But to begin with, it's really just, and you know, we had an episode about it, but done is better than perfect. You know, it's just getting the words out of your head and onto paper. And again, if that means just bullet points to begin with, or it means just one word sentences. Again, it doesn't have to be pretty. No one in the world has to see it, not even an editor. Because I mean, I don't send my first draft off to editors. My book doesn't go to an editor until it's at least the second or third draft or more. But you know, again, it's just getting that words on the paper, and you'll be surprised once you just kind of just let your mind just like don't think about it, just write, and you'll be surprised at how much you can actually get written.
Yeah,
You know, not just,
absolutely.
and it doesn't matter how fast you write. You know, like I said, if you're just taking your phone and you're hiding in the bathroom for 5 minutes, you know, how much can you know can you get it down in that 5 minutes? You know, if you're lying in bed instead of playing, you know, a video game on your phone, you know, or watching TikTok or something else, you know, write some more stuff down, and you'll actually be surprised. I found that when I write right before bed, the crazy ideas I come up with in my sleep, and then I wake up in the morning and I literally first thing I do is grab that and I'll start jotting down notes so I don't forget later on in the day. But yeah, I mean, it's just, to me, it's so much fun writing books. And um, one thing I had told my mom is, you know, getting back to kind of like an idea of a topic you could do is, you know, when you're an empty nester and you're starting to get to the point where you start getting rid of things in your house, you know,
Gosh,
like, you know,
me here
yeah,
right now.
how to do that, how
Yeah.
to know what to call it, you know, what to get rid of and what to keep. you know.
That's such a good topic. That is, I wish there were books on that.
Yeah.
I haven't seen
So
any yet. Yeah.
yeah, and you know, one thing that for the listeners, if you have an idea for a book, or if you think that maybe you should write a book and you don't know if it's a good idea, if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, leave us a note down in the comments. You know, tell us what your idea is, and we'll tell you whether it's a good idea, which I guarantee you 9 times out of 10 it will be. But you know, if you don't know how to dial that in, you know, let us know that, and you know, we can help you there too. And if you're listening on the podcast, you can always in the description of the podcast there are emails, our email addresses that you can reach out to. And while you're at it, why don't you leave us a review? Let us know how you feel. That's just a quick little plug. But anyway,
Yeah, that's good. Good. It would be great to know what ideas people have, or what kind of books would you write, you know, if you could write a book, or if you decide to write a book. But the other thing I was thinking, Keith, what do you think about this? Do you think that writing a book could be a business, or is it more of a creative process? Because I always think, like, when we produce low content books, we look at it as a business. But when I'm thinking of writing a book, that's more my creativity. I don't really think about whether I'm going to earn any money through it or
right.
not. I just think of it as something that I enjoy doing. What do you think about that? Do you see it as a
It's
business?
I think it depends on the angle that you want to take it. I think the creating of the book, the writing of the book, the story, uh, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, I think that is creative. It's what you do with that written book that turns it into a business.
Yeah.
You know, do you just offer it on your website for free? You know, as like I said, as a lead magnet for your business. Do you know, then it definitely is business oriented. You know, what's the end goal? Is your end goal to entertain? If you want to entertain people, you know, you're writing a fiction book, you know, do you want to make money from it? You know, because it's a good idea. And we could do a whole nother episode on what I call a business versus lemonade stand. Um,
Yeah.
but it really comes down to what you want to put into it once you get to the publishing side. But yeah, I mean, because for me personally, um, I write as I'm writing them, it's creative. But once it's written and edited and everything else and it's ready to go, then I switch my mindset to now it's business oriented. Conversely, you know, after you start writing for a while, you may do what's called writing to market, where you actually look online, look on Amazon and other platforms, and see what areas, what niches, as we call them, have a lot of people reading them, but there's not a lot of books. And then you write, if you're knowledgeable of that, you write a book for that. In that case, even the writing of it is business. You know, you're doing it for the sole purpose of selling more books. So I think, especially when you first start out, it's going to be creative when you're writing it. But once it's created, and you know, you've got the book covers and all that other stuff, and we can do whole other episodes on that. Plus, you can check out our regular YouTube channels about that kind of stuff. But you know, once you get to the publishing of it, which I strong, having done both traditional and self-publishing, I strongly suggest self-publishing for many reasons. But then that's when it becomes the business side for me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it just depends on the book. It depends on your reasons why you're writing. It depends on a lot. It's just that because I'm more on the low content book publishing side, obviously the people that I talk to and that are my viewers and listeners, they are thinking of it as a business from home.
Right.
And their questions are very different, probably from, because I noticed that when it overlaps into children's books, a lot of people were straight away asking, well, what's the best niche to make money in children's books? And to me, it kind of took me back, because I don't think of the money making side when it comes to children's books, even though I do make money from them. But I don't think about it like that. I think about them as a creative process, and I love creating them, and it's the fun of creating those books. And then if the money comes in, that's a bonus. But some people approach it differently, and I think it's because they're coming from that side of the business that is more money orientated. But I think if anybody wanted to write a book just because they feel like it, and then they earn money with it. That is a bonus for them.
Right.
But I think if you approach it, and sometimes I think that's in life, anything in life, if you approach it as you enjoy doing it and you enjoy the process, usually the money comes after.
Right.
Because it shows in your work, it shows that you enjoyed it, it shows you've put love and effort into it, and that usually gets rewarded. But it's an interesting, I mean, I haven't quite found the answer to that, but I think it's what you said. It depends on, you know, how you approach it and what the book is about, and whether you could be writing a book for your business, for example. So
Yeah.
in that case,
Yeah. I mean, it's that's a really great point, because I mean, I've been, and we've talked about this before, but I've been in market research for over 20 years. I you know, I've done different things within it. I could definitely write a book about market research, but I'm not passionate about market research, you know, and so that's why I haven't written a book about it. And yet I have written books about publishing books, and you know, I've written children's books and young adult novels and things like that, things that I am passionate about. So I completely agree with you on that aspect, and that you know, if it's something you're passionate about, um, you know, even more than just knowledgeable, you'll probably have it'll probably be a lot easier to write, first of all, because it'll be less like pulling teeth, because if it feels like work, it's not going to be as fun, you know. And so I definitely suggest, you know, when you write something, whether it's nonfiction or fiction, have it be something that you do enjoy. Because I mean, let's be honest, especially when you first start out, I mean, you're going to be putting a lot of time into it, you know, whether it's writing the first draft, second draft, whatever. And especially if you're going to start, you know, paying for, you know, book covers, which, you know, if those people are, you know, you're tight on budget and you're, you know, worried about book covers costing hundreds of dollars, you don't have to pay hundreds of dollars for book covers. But, you know, I mean, I get book covers done for $20 sometimes. So, it's definitely can be affordable. But anyway, I don't want to get too far off on that. That's a whole nother episode. But yeah, so I mean, ideally something you're passionate about. And I think when someone is thinking about writing a book, it's probably is something that they're passionate about.
yes.
You know, like I said, whether it's a memoir and they're writing you know, about their life, or, you know, you're writing about, you know, your cat, your dog, you know, whatever. Children's books seem to be one of the biggest things I get, is that it seems like so many people, their first book, they want to be a children's book.
I know.
You know, and that's fine. You know, it's absolutely fine. And even if there's a book out there that is covering the same topic, which, I mean, there's millions of books out there. I'm going to tell you, chances are you're not going to come up with a topic that is 100% unique. You're just not.
Everything's been done.
Right. But they haven't been done from your point of view.
Yeah.
And that's the best way to put it.
Absolutely.
I mean, Nuria, you and I could write a book about the exact same topic, and eventually we probably will. But it's coming from two completely different points of view. And so there are definitely things that will overlap, but then there are things that are unique to that particular author. And so I've heard people say that before, you know, like before I used the example of a yoga book, when there's so many yoga books out there, right? But you didn't write one. You know, it's not from your point of view. It's not from your experience, you know, having, you know, 4 kids and, you know, one on the way, or whatever, you know, whatever your particular, you know, story is.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to, if you're writing a nonfiction book, you don't have to worry about, well, you know, it's all going to be dry. It doesn't have to be. I mean, I'll be honest, in one of my nonfiction books, in the intro, which I despise intros in nonfiction books, by the way, I start off by saying I hate intros into nonfiction books. Like it's just, you learn in the intro who I am, you know, even though the rest of it is just is nonfiction. You know, it's just, you know, step by step, here's what you do, that kind of stuff. And at the end of it, I say, okay, enough of this intro crap. Let's get on, you know. So again, you get to know my personality, and that's something that no other book in that niche is going to have, you know. So it's just the biggest thing I really want people to take away from this is, I know it sounds daunting to write a book. It's really not, you know. It's can it be a lot of work? Yes. But again, getting back to what you were saying, Nuria, if it's something that you're passionate about, a lot of times it won't seem like as much work.
This is it. If you love doing something, it's not work.
Right.
So, you know,
And it doesn't have to be an epic novel.
yeah,
And you don't have to write it in one day.
exactly. Exactly. Not even in 1 year. You can take all the time that you need. I think that's the beauty about writing and doing something creative. You don't have to, there's no time limit. There's no, and you can write whatever you want. There's no limits on what you can do. So it's a very creative process. It's like any art form. And I think more people should try at least,
Yeah.
because I think it's the getting started bit, that's
Right.
the difficulty.
And one thing to keep in mind, well, two things. One is something that you'd said about, creative. I know there are people out there, maybe listening right now that are like, I'm not very creative. Don't let that deter you, because what your definition of creative may be different than somebody else's. You don't know until it's written down. And then the other thing is, just remember that whatever you write down doesn't actually ever have to get published. You know,
Exactly.
you know,
Exactly.
there's a difference between writing a story and publishing a story.
Yeah.
And so maybe you write that story and it's just something that you pass down from generation to generation. Maybe it's something that you write the second draft of it, you don't like it, it goes in a folder and you never touch it again, but at least you've written it. I will tell you firsthand that there's nothing quite like publishing a book and then getting that first draft, or getting, not first draft, but getting that copy of your first book in your hand. We like to, in the industry, we like to call them your book baby. Yeah, getting your book baby in your hand is just,
I know.
I've got 4 kids, and I mean, it doesn't come anywhere close to being a parent, but it's still pretty darn cool, I'll tell you.
It is. I remember when I did my first notebook, and that was just a notebook, nothing
Yeah.
written. I felt so proud. But then when I wrote my first children's book,
Yeah.
wow, that was the ultimate. Just to see that book in your hands published. There aren't many feelings like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a baby. It's producing a baby.
It is. And I felt the same way with whether it's the nonfiction books I've written, the children's books, the very first novel I wrote, young adult novel, same way. As a matter of fact, I even did an unboxing and a live video of it on my YouTube channel. And so many people were commenting that they could see me getting teary-eyed, which is so stupid. I'm a big baby anyway, but when it comes to that kind of stuff, but yeah, I mean, it really, because how much time and effort you put into this thing,
I know. It's
and so
emotional. Yeah.
it is, and it's so, I mean, I think that's one reason why I really am an advocate for people to write a book, is because there's so much joy that I find in it, and in the world that we live in, I just want there to be more joy, and
Absolutely.
not only the joy in writing it, but when you get your first sale, that's a huge endorphin rush. When you get your first positive review, and it's like, oh wow, someone else is reading my book,
Yeah.
just those kind of thoughts, emails, whatever that you get. And again, that's whether it's fiction or nonfiction. I mean,
Yeah, my first children's book, my daughter said to me, Mum, some lady's going to be reading this to her child. Imagine that, and that is it's huge, I
yeah,
found that incredible, So yeah, I can believe you got teary-eyed because it is emotional. It is.
I had I actually had um, a customer who, a reader who they actually emailed me a video of her 7-year-old autistic son reading my book, one of my children's books. That has been by far the proudest moment in my book, my authoring history. Just that, and that was 5 years ago. So the kid's basically a teenager now. And every once in a while, I still get an email from the mom saying how much, it really meant to him. So again, things like that, you just can't put a price on. Whether that book doesn't sell more than one copy, I wouldn't care,
Yeah.
So anyway, so yes, the short answer, as far as I'm concerned, is should you write a book? The answer is yes. I like I said, I can't think of a reason why you shouldn't.
No, unless you don't enjoy it, then don't.
But I mean, even then, if
Even then.
if you didn't write your book, you don't know if you like it yet, right?
That's
Um,
very true. Yeah.
Right. So, and again, it could be just a short story, just, again, plus we've got so much stuff in our minds. Why not take something that you've got in there and get it down on paper so it's no longer bogging your mind?
Yeah.
But you would be surprised, I think, at how much you enjoy it. And again, it could be completely business oriented. You own a construction company and you want to get more business. Well, if you have a book out there, there's this, just automatic, more integrity and more professionalism,
Yeah.
and you just seem like more of
An
an
authority
influencer,
almost. Yeah.
yeah, in that particular industry,
Yeah.
compared to your competition. It's that simple.
Absolutely.
So yeah, just plenty of reasons to write one. Again, I can't think of any reason not to. Like I said, even if it's just I'm short on time. I mean, I don't think anybody can argue with my my hiding out in the bathroom thing. I mean, it's 5 minutes, and I'll tell you, my youngest daughter, she has a little girl right now. My daughter's 21, and she hides out in that bathroom when her husband's home. She'll hide out in that bathroom for 10-15 minutes, just get some peace and quiet.
Just some quiet time.
That's out of 10 or 15 minutes that you're hiding, you can write 5 minutes worth of words down. So
That's great.
all right, well, this has been another great mastermind, Nuria. We want to say a huge thank you to each and every one of you for viewing and listening, and for tagging along. If you enjoyed today's mastermind, it would mean the world to us if you left us a review and subscribe on your podcast listening platform of choice. I don't know about you, Nuria, but I'm super excited about next week's episode.
Yeah, I'm excited about any episode that we
Yeah.
do, because we always seem to find really good topics to talk about. So
Yeah, and it's funny.
it'll be good.
It's funny because we'll sit there and be like, I don't know if I can talk about this for a whole episode, and then we end up going longer than we normally would. So yeah, I'm super excited. So
Yeah.
until next week, I'm Keith Wheeler.
And I'm still Nuria Corby.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining the Mastermind today. Be sure to follow the podcast on your platform of choice and tell a friend who would enjoy it too. Your support is greatly appreciated. This has been the Masterminding Success Podcast.